have several people from different parts of the world, and it is to celebrate World Day of Diversity that WOSM and KAICIID have come together to organize a day to talk about diversity of forms of dialogue around the world. The webinar is going to be recorded because we know that not everybody can be present at this point in time. So to make it available to an even greater audience, we're recording the event. And it will be available on the KAICIID channel and also hopefully linked to the WOSM website as soon as possible. So welcome to our joint webinar today. On the right-hand side in the chat room, you will find the description in 3 paragraphs that you have probably already read in joining this particular webinar today. So I don't need to repeat that. But one thing is certain is that the collaboration between WOSM and KAICIID goes back to 2013. So it's a relatively long collaboration, and at the heart of that collaboration is the development of the Dialogue for Peace program that both of our organizations are incredibly proud about. And so today is an opportunity to have a little inkling of the amazing number of fruits which this Dialogue for Peace program has allowed KAICIID Scouts, KAICIID WOSM collaboration has been able to do with Scouts around the world. So first, we will have a very brief presentation by Cynthia Marquez of the Office of the Scout Movement in Kuala Lumpur, who will present this program briefly. The second part of our webinar will be 5 wonderful presentations by 5 incredible people whose bios you will see on the chat posted when they begin to each speak. Finally, after that, we will have a question, comments, and answer period for all of you who participate online to be able to participate in a more dynamic way, in a more dialogical way, hopefully. Finally, a last little point of logistics. While each speaker is speaking, do take the opportunity in your chat to address questions directly to each speaker in the language of your preference. And in the background, we have wonderful Anya Piscour from KAICIID, who's helping to coordinate all of those answers, those questions, sorry, so that we can get answers from each speaker, either directly in the chat or later on at the beginning of the Q&A question and answer period. So that's all for the logistics and for the introductions. And now I turn to Cynthia Marquez for her small contribution today to present this wonderful Dialogue for Peace program. Por favor, Cynthia.
Thank you very much, Patrice, and thank you all for joining us today, both our Scout audience and also all the guests coming from the KAICIID side invitation. I just want to check if you see my screen. If you see a nice dialogue bubble, great. I will be brief, but it was important for you to know where does this come from and what we are trying to do together, KAICIID and us. This is a joint collaboration between KAICIID Dialogue Center and Scouts that started around 2013, where our paths joined, and we found many common things and many common missions. And one of them, or the most important, is mutual understanding and promote culture of peace. So what we started developing together was a program, a joint collaboration to develop capacities for young people and adults. So we have one first thing, which is the accreditation for adults. Adults above 17 or 18 years of age and with no limit of age can develop capacities with us, with the support of ambassadors that you have here and many others in our Dialogue for Peace International team in 2 ways. They can support young people to develop program, to develop activities, non-formal education activities at the grassroots level. Young people has the possibility to learn about dialogue from 7 years of age until 18 through activities, interactive games, and they need to, or it's part of the inspiration, to develop a community service, bringing dialogue to local communities and to other people. Adults also will develop capacities to present and develop interreligious dialogue for young people. And this is how we are fostering this network of young dialogue ambassadors that can learn more and make their communities more resilient. Now, this same adult can take 2 other roles as a dialogue ambassador. One role is the dialogue facilitator. These adults will learn how to use the methodologies that KAICIID has taught us into designing and supporting communities with a dialogue process, use the dialogue circle and the principles of dialogue to find mutual understanding, to have common ground, and to address issues in a variety of topics as our speakers will present. But there are also adults that will take the role of a trainer. The trainers will help us develop more knowledge, more awareness in more adults, scouts and non-scouts, and this becomes learning experiences, training that we develop for different communities and young people so they can start exploring what is this methodology about, how to use dialogue in their community, how to develop their own skills. So this is a little bit of what the different teams and speakers have been doing in the past years and what we WOSM have been implementing through our movement, thanks to the generous support of Patrice, Anna's, Professor Abonimer, and the financial support for other projects and small projects also for young people. Back to you, Patrice.
Muchísimas gracias, Cynthia. Many, many thanks. This is a jewel of a program, and we really are celebrating today its rich diversity and products, the fruits of that program in the lives of so many Scouts worldwide, and especially those who have taken it upon themselves to train themselves as trainers of dialogue and have been exemplary in developing programs of dialogue. 5 of which we will hear about in more details today. But let me first begin to say in a few words what I think is also important to understand when we think about dialogue, because initially dialogue developed in the circles of some people, primarily religiously trained people who talk to each other in more in-depth ways, and eventually that particular form of human communication began to be seen as translatable to other areas of human concerns, interest, and possibly even areas of tensions and conflict. And so dialogue is a very unique way of to communicate as human beings. And on the chat, you will see appearing, if it's not already there, the 10 principles of dialogue that we have developed together, KAICIID and WOSM. Then that's part of the learning of this, at the heart of this Dialogue for Peace program. But in addition to that, those 10 principles, which are really at the heart of the process of dialogue, I need to add also just a few more points. One of them, for example, is that when people get together to do a dialogue, it sometimes begins, and it's appropriate that it begins this way, amongst persons who are coming just simply to get to know each other better. So it's a closed circle of people, in the sense that it's a group of people that share about each other, to learn about each other. A second sort of way of bringing people together for dialogue is to say, we actually are representatives of groups of people, of organizations, and as such, we come together to share and to dialogue with each other as representatives of our organizations, of our groups. And that's, of course, a little bit more complicated. And a third way, of course, is to come together from either personal or organizational backgrounds to come together to address a concern, a tension, a conflict in a community, and do that in a way that can actually be as inclusive of the different perspectives on that particular area of concern together. In order to go back and do work together in a collaborative way in the society to transform society for peace. And so that third way of doing dialogue is, of course, more demanding. In the examples that we will hear today, we will see that this is happening in different ways within the Scouting movement. I'd like to also say that when you think about the dialogue, it can address an infinite number of topics. From family concerns in a very small, tangible way at home, all the way to global issues, as we will see from the first presentation from Jan in Denmark, who will talk about circles of compassion, and in an open online space in order to bring people from around the world to share sort of with compassion where they are at in a time of COVID, in a time of global pandemic. But then, of course, there are others who have developed dialogue programs that are on a smaller scale geographically. We have the case of Nika, our second presenter from the Ukraine, who will be presenting on the Eurasia region of the Scouting movement, and look at the way in which dialogue has been used to communicate better between the different members of that very big region of the world. Finally, we will have also presentations that will look at the ways in which we have dialogue examples that are directly linked to serving community in general, as the case of the Philippines, that will actually be, in other words, a space open for Scouts to interact also with other non-Scouts people in their communities in an interfaith, developing an interfaith space together. The fourth example will come, of course, from Tunisia, from Amin, and Amin will be presenting in a way that will look at the ways in which the collaboration with Denmark, therefore an inter-regional collaboration, focuses on questions of human rights, and how you use dialogue in order to foster better understanding as to what are the issues of human rights and how to address them in a way that will produce transformations in people so that they can actually be closer to living up to the ideals of human rights and responsibilities on different topics of tensions and conflict. And finally, we'll have Amanda, who will speak looking at Nicaragua, a country with grave conflicts today, and look at that particular example of how Scouts have used dialogue in order to foster a sense of possibility and hope for future peace in the country through their efforts. That particular presentation will be done in Spanish, and I will be summarizing her different slides along the way of that presentation. So through these 5 examples, and there are many others in Africa, in North America, in different parts of the world, that are not represented here today for a matter of time, but definitely there are many, many wonderful cases that are emerging out of the results of the Dialogue for Peace program. So now I would like to simply turn to the first speaker, Jan from Denmark. Go ahead, Jan.
Yes, thank you so much, Patrice, and thank you for the wonderful introduction. I'm here to, of course, speak about the initiative, the Online Circle of Compassion, which is a global virtual safe space community. In that space, compassionate listening is at the heart of everything that we do. So we have basically been around since every Sunday since late July 2020, and we're only just beginning. It all started out with me responding to a post made by one of the KAICIID Fellowship alumnis, Miss Jana, about the alarming mental and emotional situation that young people face during this COVID-19 pandemic. Her post was mostly about India and Northern Africa, but it turns out it's worldwide. So we decided on a call and quickly agreed that we needed to act now. During our online, our Jodi, which is World Scouting's jamboree on the air and on the internet, World Scouting with guides from KAICIID and especially from Patrice, has sparked an idea about having online dialogue circles and moving it to the online space. And by that, we knew that if we joined hands and knowledge, but most importantly, our inner drive to help other people in need, we could set sails where looking back was not an option. Because the situation in many countries, looking at the mental health situation, was hard. Some countries, even more in local communities, talking about emotional struggles, mental illness is considered a taboo. It's shameful and puts a family in a bad situation, in a bad light. So therefore, many people had nowhere to go at all, which was resulted in what you can see in high increase in suicide rate, especially amongst young people. So through our knowledge about dialogue and how to structure it, because Mr. He is also trained through KAICIID about this, we decided to launch this online platform where the simple prompt would be every week, how are you feeling today? We couldn't do it alone, so we reached out to our support networks, and me within World Scouting and Ms. Suhini within her interfaith leadership networks. And the support was huge, varying in age, gender, sex, nationality, etc. We had consultants, or no, not consultants, but coordinators from the United States, Colombia, Sri Lanka, England, through to Romania and Ghana and so on. And the list is long and represents, luckily for us, a broad picture of societies, cultures, faiths, languages. And what to say, just 3 weeks after our call, we could throw ourselves into our first live session, having some 70 people signed up, and they all showed up. Very overwhelming indeed, that so many people trusted us to hold their space. And people that didn't know us at all. That was touching, and we knew that we had at least put in an effort where it was most needed. What kept it running good is that we had very clear ground rules set from day one. So we have never had any issues to have to kick people out of the room or whatever. And that has worked like magic, and seeing and being so enriching how everybody listened so deeply to understand and to learn about each other. I guess like Scouts like to have a purpose behind everything. There needs to be a purpose. And this sure was. And I guess that is a good example of that. We also knew that in order to keep it a sustainable community, that training for those who would like to facilitate was needed. We needed to build up competences of dialogue facilitation so that other people could lead circles alongside us or even without us, which boosted the use of the Dialogue for Peace program within our small community. And we have so far been able to train 18 other people to have facilitation skills needed to hold their space for other people in that sense. We also seek to sometimes take a broader view to be outside of the circle to gain more knowledge to people. So we also teamed up with 3 other organizations during both the Interfaith Harmony Week with the representatives from faith traditions to explore the role of compassion within interfaith dialogue. The more we understand of each other, the more we also emphasize. At least that comes from my side. We are keeping constantly to seek to hold the space for other persons, the need for them to have a safe space to feel seen, heard, and understood, without the fear of any judgment or any kind of pressure. Within the community, we see it grow. We see people bond between each other and form relationships where I guess it's out of a feeling of oneness. People come there and they see each other as one big family. They know each other more in depth. And by the end of any session, there is only smiles. And that truly makes me happy every time. Like there's never anybody leaving with a sour face or a sad face. Everybody smiles and are happy. They're seen, they're understood. They feel relieved. We're going to keep active. And we have things in the planning and proposals out to try to reach out to parts of the world where online circles cannot match, they cannot reach because of lack of technology and so on. But again, as COVID-19 is still here, that's not an option yet. Must next year, perhaps. What more to say? I don't think there's much to say. I would like to end this with saying, this is more a quotation, that a person's most useful asset is not a head full of knowledge, sorry, but a heart full of love, an ear ready to listen, and hands willing to help. So much for having me here and allowing me to speak.
Tak, many, many thanks, Jon. This is beautiful, sharing, powerful example of how dialogue and the listening through compassionate hearts is possible, especially helping each other at this time of pandemic that we are all suffering through in different ways to different degrees in our own communities and at home. So many, many thanks, Tak, for sharing this, Jan. So I would now like to pass the microphone, so to speak, to Nika from the Ukraine to talk about her experience of dialogue in the Eurasia region of the Scouting movement. Nika.
Thank you very much, Patrice. So yeah, my name is Nika. I'm from Ukraine, and Ukraine is a part of the Eurasia region of World Scouting, and the region that has its strengths but also its challenges. Unfortunately, the social situation leaves much to be desired. We have 9 countries in our region, like Russia, Moldova, Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, Armenia, among others, Georgia. And after the collapse of the Soviet Union, so we were all together before, and we still share the same language, which is Russian. But unfortunately, just for now, only 2 countries in the region are not in a state of an active or passive conflict with another country or countries, or political tensions inside the countries. And of course, it impacts a lot our young people, our national scout organizations, and the population in general. So my goal has been to activate the young people of the Eurasia region to show that actually dialogue can be a very good tool to better understand and address social, cultural, political tensions in the region, the issues, and to show that through the dialogue practices and through the active participation, we can work together, we can make a difference, and regardless of our background and our origin, we can still improve the situation and, a bit bring some peace to our lives. So in September 2019, I would like to show you this first slide just for visual representation, where you can see the names of the countries in the region and some data about the training. So in September 2019, I became the lead coordinator of the Dialogue for Peace training in the region for 30 participants. So from the Eurasia countries who gathered together before the regional youth forum and the regional conference, where we had more than 150 people in total involved. And we learned a lot about dialogue during this training. We talked a lot, we practiced it, we saw how it can be used and what impact it can make. So here are just some pictures from how it was. As the result of this initiative, the young people, the participants of the training, the leaders, we were able to deepen our knowledge, to activate the dialogue skills of the participants, also to gain some confidence, to feel empowered, to be empowered to implement the dialogue practices straight away at the regional events, so the conference and the forum, to ensure the smooth and peaceful decision-making process. And most importantly, the participants of the training, they became the ambassadors of dialogue, not only in their delegations, not only during the regional events when they participated in them, but also back in their countries. So this practice continued, and they ran their national, local trainings, and they were examples, and they have been examples, they still are, how dialogue can bring change. There is still much work to be done, but I believe that we managed, with this training, we managed to plant the seeds of change. And as we say, that a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And so I just would like to invite all of you who is looking for inspiration, you know, to join and stand with us, so that with the help of dialogue, it's through active participation as well, we can make changes in ourselves, in our communities. We can start small and grow big, and so that we can make our countries, our regions a little better. So good luck to you all, and thank you for having me. Thank you, Patrice. Back to you.
Jacopo, many thanks, Nika, for this sharing this wonderful example in the Eurasia region of the Scouting movement. It's really important because, of course, you know, applying dialogue sort of at a structural level within an organization is really important. It helps so much in the long term improve sort of the quality of communication, as you were mentioning, and that is a way indirectly to actually improve sort of the possibility of having more action on the ground. And I really like sort of what you mentioned about sort of as you do the Dialogue for Peace program with people around the region, you see the trickling down effect that this program is having in your region, so that young people can actually be empowered to be actively artisan of peace in their own local communities. And that ultimately is absolutely vital for the health of the world. So, Jacopo, thank you very much, Nika. Now we're passing to our third speaker, Amin from Tunisia. So, Faddalu, Amin.
Hello, Patrice. Hello, everyone, and thank you for this great opportunity to promote dialogue via KAICIID and the WOSM partnership. So, like you know, the new reality of working from home, the homeschooling of children, and the lack of physical contacts with other family members, friends, and colleagues take time to get used to. As you know, adapting to lifestyle changes such as this and managing the fear of contracting the virus are challenging for all of us. Happily, there is a lot of things that we can do to look after our mental health and to help others who may need some extra supports and care. I will not talk about barrier gesture or physical distancing and wearing masks because everyone should know these tips for now. My other tips is using dialogue to overcome this crisis. I will talk about my journey about promotion dialogue and how it's influencing other friends in my country, Tunisia, and in the Arab regions to use dialogue to overcome, like I said, the COVID situation. It started, like Joan, after the famous Jyoti and dialogue sessions, which were a success, and which showed that despite the COVID situations, we can meet, we can chat, even virtually, and talk in several teams without limits, without restriction, and with total freedom. So my friends in the Arab regions contacted me to lead some dialogue sessions to help other leaders in their efforts on the ground. They are asking what the skills are needed to address people, how can we accept people despite their differences, what is the perception or misperceptions, can our point of view change after knowing each other's or identities, and several other questions that I and my other friends have tried to answer and discuss. I will share with you some photo about my experience. Okay, is that clear now? Okay, that's good. So this is like the photo of the famous Jyoti dialogue sessions. So after that, we organized with our friend in Algeria a seminar or dialogue sessions with the participant of 60 people, 60 leaders. We talk about the situation, we talk about dialogue program, we talk about the misperceptions and and every time we had like a good answer and good questions about this whole program. The second one is with Morocco. Also, we started the dialogue session, more than one dialogue, about the role of our NSO during the COVID situations, what we have to do during this situation or this lockdown. Of course, I don't forget my Tunisia. So I organized many sessions in Tunisia in the fight. To help people to understand how can we use dialogue with other people, non-scout, of course. The participation is 26 leaders. After that, I had the chance to lead the dialogue sessions within the program Youth Against Bullying from our friend from Egypt. It's a project aims to spread the awareness of prevention of bullying through interrogating Scouts youth and the people who suffer from bullying. And this is like a very important thing to share with other people, of course. Session with Jusur Youth Organization from Iraq, and the participation are activists and NGOs leader from Iraq, Algeria. And the aim of this dialogue is how to be part and how to contribute to our society's effort to share and disseminate accurate information regarding COVID-19, and how to use the goal number 17 in SDGs to build a community and a network to confront the crisis situation together. After that, we have like organized dialogue sessions during the national training courses in the International Scout Center in Tunisia. The participation are 62 people. It's always about the COVID situation and how to use dialogue to confront our fear. I assist with my friend Amel Riden. She's like one of our team and an international trainer of Dialogue for Peace program. I assist her to promote the dialogue session with her project called Team Peace, and this project is granted from the Scout donation platform. The aim of this program is to spread the culture of dialogue and peace among more than 400 people, young men and women in Tunisia here. I will not be able to talk about dialogue without mentioning the big effort of our friend from the AFD, Ambassador for Dialogue, which is a sub-project within the framework of 10 years partnership with our friend from Denmark. It's Danish-Tunisian Scout Alliance with the support of MOP Fund. And John know that, of course, they organized many dialogue sessions about many themes. For example, they celebrate the Mental Health Month by organizing a series of dialogue sessions on how to raise society awareness about the importance of mental health, especially during this lockdown situation and the health crisis. They do the dialogue trip going from the north to the south of Tunisia. They organized more than 19 dialogue sessions about human rights, SDGs objective, advocacy campaign. So it's like, it was a very interesting trip. They celebrate the International Women's Day, and especially the pink tax or gender tax. Yeah, of course, with the Tunisian youth active and civil society. And finally, I promote the dialogue session with Amel, like I said, for sessions, dialogue, various debate sessions. As you know, it's important to these people to know what's difference about dialogue and what's dialogue and what's debates. This is like a small overview of my journey during this pandemic. This is a summary of our effort to use dialogue as a tool to face these difficult conditions that the whole world is going through. And in conclusions, I would like to say that if we cannot exist on the ground due to the restrictions, there is only way to play an advocacy role. It's like through dialogue sessions that help people to overcome their panic zone. Thank you, Patrice.
Shukran, yeah, I mean, many thanks. This is a rich presentation, much more than one I thought initially. You really are working also not only in Tunisia and in collaboration with Denmark, but also throughout the Arab region. And so the examples you're giving are many and very rich. And so they also show something important. They show that the training about dialogue to gain the skills of dialogue is combined with specific topics, specific thematic issues such as bullying and so on and so forth. So, and I noticed that the topics were different from one country to another as well. And so the needs are different. And that's also very important to recognize as we developed the dialogue to make it applicable to respond to local needs or national needs or regional needs is really important as well. So that's why it also takes very different colors, if I may say, in different parts of the world. So shukran jazilan again, Amin. I'd like now to turn to our fourth presenter, Derek from the Philippines with the Interfaith Network.
Thank you very much, Sir Patrice. I hope everyone can see my screen. I know right now it's around 2:40 in the afternoon in Vienna, Austria. So I'd like to greet all of you a good morning. Because here in Boys House of the Philippines, despite the time, even if it's afternoon or it's night, we always greet each other a good morning because we believe that scouts usher the dawn of a new beginning. So tonight here in the Philippines and this afternoon in Austria, I will present to you our project, which is Faithful, or in our language, Proyekto Pagtuo. So Faithful Proyekto Pagtuo started as a dream to create a network of youth leaders turned scouts coming from different religious beliefs to show that despite our differences, we can still work together to achieve social cohesion. This project was made possible because of a grant through the Dialogue for Peace Fund of WOSM and KAICIID. Our project is youth-led and youth-organized. Along with me, spearheading this project is Eagle Scout Jules Andre E. Ermio and Eagle Scout John Paul G. Duhelio, both 18 years old, and serves as the executive coordinators of the project. So Faithful Proyekto Pagtuo is a project of the Scouts from the Boys House of the Philippines, Bacolod City Council, Aguila Bacolod, and the National Eagle Scouts Association of the Philippines, Papa Isho, Chapter Number 6. It aims to create an interfaith network of youth leaders working as advocates for interfaith dialogue and towards the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. In our situation, the problem in our community is the subconscious growth of stereotypes based on religious belief or faith. For example, if you're Catholic, you're automatically or you're easily identified as somewhat like a pedophile, right? Or if you're a Muslim or you're observing the Islam faith, you're identified as a seller of pirated DVDs. So that's some of the stereotypes you are experiencing here in the Philippines. So this stereotypes creates a gap that disconnects the people, especially the youth, from working together because the stereotypes are already preconceived in their minds. Our project, Faithful Proyekto Pagtuo, aims to close that gap. Our objective is to show that despite the differences in religious belief, the youth can still work together for the common good of the community. We will show this by creating an interfaith network of youth leaders, and we have just included our FFPP boot camp, where we train youth leaders to become rover scouts and advocates for interfaith dialogue. In this boot camp, the participants are formally introduced to the scouting movement and officially registered as rover scouts of the Boy Scouts of the Philippines. Furthermore, they have undergone intensive training for community project implementation and the Dialogue for Peace program of WOSM. And then after the boot camp, the participants will implement their own sustainable community project tackling faith or religion-related dialogue problems for a span of 2 months. We call our participants advocates. This is because we see this project not as a one-time thing, but something they will carry on for the rest of their lives, even if they are not active in scouting. Our advocates compose the interfaith network that they wanted to create. Through the boot camp, we're empowering advocates and strengthening the network that we are creating. Our current interfaith network is composed of 38 scouts with different religious beliefs. Specifically, the Roman Catholic faith, coming also from the Seventh-day Adventists, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Baptist, Islam, born-again Christian, and from the Iglesia ni Cristo or the Church of Jesus Christ. So I would like to reiterate that those stereotypes that I have said before are the ones that are rampant here in our community, which I've personally experienced. And that's the stereotype that we want to destroy or diminish in our community. So the Interfaith Network of Faithful Prekto Bagto is the first of its kind in the Philippines. It is the first interfaith network created by the youth and by scouts that advocates for interfaith dialogue. We are also looking forward to be the first Dialogue for Peace badge holders in the Philippines. To this day, the Interfaith Network has implemented numerous projects, one of which is the Guba Negros Island Youth Forum. In this forum, youth leaders from different student councils and organizations gather to discuss local contemporary issues and come up with possible resolutions to answer these issues. A product of the Negros Island Youth Forum is a movement to raise awareness about juvenile delinquency called Kunta. Kunta is a Hiligaynon word for hope, wish, or desire of the future and regret of the past. More than implementing our own projects, the Interfaith Network is also looking towards finding the role of religion or faith and acting upon the different social issues we are experiencing. As of writing, our advocates are planning for a widespread campaign for voters' education and registration, gender equality, and shifting dialogue in an online platform. The next goal of Faithful Prekto Bagto is to expand the surrounding municipalities, cities, and regions in the Philippines. The project is a symbolic start of dialogue and the scouting movement in the Philippines. Our project is still currently ongoing. From becoming a simple training project, it transformed into a network that will continue on advocating for dialogue. What we've learned so far in this project is that number one, we must empower the youth. Let the youth organize, lead, and implement. Our projects must be youth organized and only adult supervised. Number two, in some way or another, religions are a role to play in every social issue, from our environment to gender equality and even in civic engagement. Lastly, we must incorporate dialogue in creating better communities, but to sustain these communities, we also need actions. This is Faithful Prekto Pagtuo of the Boy Scouts of the Philippines, and I am Eagle Scout John Derek M. Dormis, the Executive Director and an advocate for interfaith dialogue.
Salamat po, Derek. Thank you very much, Derek, for this rich presentation. It's one thing, but with ramifications which go into different directions thematically. It's one network, but again, with many actions, many activities on the ground. And so it's really powerful example of how you could sort of use dialogue to sustain sort of a group of people ever larger to act in their own local context. So many thanks for that example. The one particular element that comes out to me from the beginning of your presentation in terms of who are the young people involved in it, and realize that in fact in the Dialogue for Peace program, one of the beauty is that there is no minimum age to get involved in dialogue or even to organize dialogue. And that's a great message to send out there. So thank you, Derek, for that. Salamat po. I'd like now to turn to our fifth and last speaker, Amanda from Nicaragua. Amanda, por favor.
Hola, buenas a todos y todas. Saluda Amanda desde Nicaragua y voy a compartir un poco una experiencia que tuvimos en el 2018 en nuestra organización Scout. y que ha dejado pues resultados palpables hasta el día de hoy.
So I wish my welcome to everybody, and I will share a story that comes out of our national association organization, in Nicaragua. Some of the slides are in English, by the way, so that will help all of us. Amanda, por favor.
Bien, para poder entender un poco la actividad tan importante que tuvimos en la organización, es de mucha importancia que les comente un poco el contexto en el que estaba el país en ese momento. En el año 2018 la vida de los nicaragüenses cambió, dio un giro rotundo. Entramos en una crisis política, social y económica como resultado de años de prácticas estatales que fueron coartando la expresión ciudadana y cerrando cada vez más los espacios de comunicación. Una reforma al seguro social hizo que la crisis estallara de una manera muy violenta, con manifestaciones en contra del gobierno, y esto hizo que el termómetro social estallara. Pues necesitaría un día completo para poder explicar el impacto que tuvo esa crisis en el país, pero para decirlo de manera resumida, el informe de la Agencia de Naciones Unidas reportó un saldo de más de 300 muertos, miles de heridos, un éxodo de más de 100.000 personas que tuvieron que huir del país por razones políticas, la mayoría otros por razones económicas, y hubieron más o menos como 700 presos o privados de libertad por razones políticas. Hoy en día se calcula que hay aproximadamente 100 personas todavía privadas de libertad. Ante esta crisis se propuso un diálogo nacional en el que la Iglesia, la Conferencia Episcopal, la Iglesia Católica, fungió como moderadora, y había representación de todos los sectores del país. Por un lado estaba el sector del gobierno y por otro lado estaba el sector educativo, había representación de las organizaciones de sociedad civil, había representación de la comunidad estudiantil, de la comunidad educativa, de la empresa privada. Este intento de diálogo solamente duró 7 días. Era evidente que el diálogo era una materia pendiente para Nicaragua. No hubo manera de ponerse de acuerdo. El gobierno emitió un comunicado que decía que pues no se habían puesto de acuerdo porque la agenda que llevaban los otros sectores del país era un golpe de Estado y eso era terrorismo. A partir de esa situación, pues se formaron los dos bandos muy claros, con nombres, y la ruptura abarcó todo el país, todas las familias, todas las comunidades, y por supuesto llegó también a nuestra organización. La organización tuvo una fractura muy grande, no había forma de ponernos de acuerdo sobre la posición institucional, sobre la conducta en común a tomar institucionalmente. Al igual que en el país, pues se dividieron dos bandos. Por un lado, había un reclamo muy fuerte a la Junta Directiva porque se hicieran pronunciamientos en defensa de los derechos humanos, se hicieran pronunciamientos en contra del gobierno, y por otro lado, había más bien una presión hacia la Junta Directiva porque se les prohibiera o se les negara a cualquier miembro de la organización participar activamente de alguno de estos movimientos de protesta. La organización estaba completamente fracturada.
Amanda,
¿sí?
Sí, por favor, ¿me da el tiempo de resumir, por favor?
Ah, perdón, claro.
Sorry. I'm going to briefly summarize some of the key points here. As you've seen from the slides, the country of Nicaragua has been living through years of conflicts, and the whole political infrastructure has been developing sort of different ways of functioning that has led to a variety of forms of violence. And Amanda gave several examples of death tolls and people affected in terms of their human rights in various ways. And so the impact of the policy of the government at that point in time until 2018 was so negative that eventually a national dialogue coalition from people of different sectors came to develop. And so over 7 days, there was an intense national dialogue with people of all sectors of society, including, of course, civil society, where the Scouts are part of. And this was a dialogue which was called by the bishops, the Catholic bishops, the majority religion in Nicaragua, for the country as a whole. Sadly, there was a coup d'etat that followed shortly thereafter. And in that context, there were even greater divisions that emerged in the society, more violence, and that started to affect the people within the Scouting National Organization, that became fractured between people of different ideologies regarding what to do and how to respond to the national situation in Nicaragua. Por favor, Amanda. Sigue.
Sí. Solamente aclarar que no hubo golpe de Estado como tal.
Ah, okay. So there was no, sorry, I misunderstood. There was no coup d'etat per se. Yes, Amanda? Sorry.
Sino que el gobierno dijo que ese era el intento en ese momento y que se había usado como excusa el tema de la reforma del seguro social.
So it's the theme of social reform which has been the excuse for the government to intervene and not follow up on some, I think, of the suggestions to change society. Correct, Amanda?
Más o menos.
Más o menos, more or less, sorry.
Bien,
okay.
Volviendo a la fractura de la organización, había mucha división. Quizás sea importante hablar de el reclamo de parte de la membresía para que se apoyaran las protestas, y otra parte de la membresía decía que debíamos prohibir la participación de los jóvenes, de nuestros integrantes, en estas protestas.
Okay, so part of the organization supports these reforms, and others are not for it.
Esa fractura nos obligó a sentarnos, reunirnos para dialogar, y para esto la organización solicitó un servicio de la oficina regional y apoyo de la oficina mundial.
So the split in the organization forced people to sit down to talk about it, to dialogue about it, with the help of the regional office.
Pedimos su apoyo para que pudieran ayudarnos a organizar un diálogo dentro de la organización con los educadores voluntarios.
And so they did, in fact, they regionally helped locally in Nicaragua to have this dialogue.
Así que realizamos una sesión que duró 2 días, donde pusimos en práctica todas las técnicas de diálogo para la paz.
So they developed a 2-day program on dialogue for peace in Nicaragua.
Que estaban incluidas con un análisis más objetivo del contexto del país y de la problemática de la organización.
Looking at both sort of the country context, addressing that, as well as, of course, its implications on the organization itself.
Voy a dejarles un poco de lo que fue esa reunión.
What we will see now is what happened during those this two-day meeting. We're trying to get a clip going.
No sé qué pasa. A ver.
Okay, let's try one last time.
Bien, a través del diálogo, de la metodología de diálogo, la organización pudo salir adelante. Es importante para que el diálogo dentro de un conflicto pueda ser exitoso, que te conectes de alguna manera con el otro, que seas empático sinceramente con el otro y que empecemos a ver todas las cosas comunes que teníamos a raíz de ese conflicto.
And so this training allowed for the use of dialogue. The methodology of dialogue has allowed the organizations to overcome sort of the division and go ahead as an organization all together, despite, of course, some differences. And the way it also made them realize just how much they had in common despite those differences.
Entendimos que en esta crisis no habían ganadores, si no nos uníamos. Entendimos que la mejor manera de apoyar a nuestro país era sosteniendo la organización, permitiendo que siguiera existiendo.
And so in this conflict, there are no winners. And the best way to actually work to sustain and improve the country is, in fact, through working commonly in the scouting organization.
A raíz de eso, vimos la importancia de utilizar el diálogo en todos los espacios de nuestra organización.
And so based on that experience, they realized the importance of disseminating the practice of dialogue throughout the organization.
Uno de los resultados más importantes de este encuentro fue la planificación y la creación de nuestro proyecto educativo en la organización.
And so one of the greatest results of that meeting was the actual process of planning a variety of actions and activities in the organization throughout the country.
Y dentro de ese proyecto educativo, una de las prioridades estratégicas que se está trabajando transversal en todas las áreas, el diálogo y cultura de paz.
And so, of course, this was primarily educational activities. The primary focus of which was to talk about the culture of peace.
Se han hecho otras iniciativas como las que ven en la diapositiva. Uno de ellos es una campaña de mensajeros de paz, donde promovemos el diálogo a través de una serie animada.
And so here you can see some elements of a campaign to promote a dialogue of peace through a variety of different animations.
Y se está diseñando en este momento un programa especial de diálogo para la paz para nuestros jóvenes de 15 a 21 años.
Perdón. ¿Para qué? ¿Para quién?
Para los jóvenes de 15 a 21 años.
So their program, educational program for young people from already as young as 5 years old all the way up to 18, 19.
El contexto del país no ha cambiado mucho. Estamos en año electoral, pero la organización está lista para seguir trabajando en generar espacios de comunicación que nos permitan llegar a acuerdos y a objetivos comunes.
And while the situation in the country has not improved very much, and it's in the process of having soon some elections, the organization at least has been able to come together and promote its common activities and objectives. Estamos terminando, Amanda, porque el tiempo pasa.
¿Perdón?
El tiempo pasa.
Sí, no, ya agradecer el espacio y abiertos a cualquier pregunta.
Muy bien. And so she's thanking everybody and will respond to questions in the chat or orally soon. So muchísimas gracias, Amanda. Many thanks, Amanda, for again a rich presentation, which shows how vital the methodology of dialogue is, especially in context of conflict, when it seems like people are so divided that they can't talk to each other anymore. Some of us are training each other in dialogue to apply that approach so that we can bring people of at times opposing and at times even violently opposing sides to come together and find ways to hear each other, listen to each other, and eventually slowly transform their understanding of the complexity of the positions, and in the process change possibly a little bit here and there their understanding and their positions themselves, which in turn helps improve how they relate to people from opposite sides. And so brilliant example, Amanda, also of how to use dialogue in a conflict situation within a national scout organization in Nicaragua. Gracias. Let me turn now to our period of question and answers. Let me see what we have in terms of the different questions that have emerged for the different speakers. I know that a lot of things have been happening on the side in the chat space, which is great. That's the purpose of having this accessible. And so some of these questions, I think, have begun to be answered by the different speakers. What I may do now first is to turn in the same order in which we have seen or heard the speakers. It'd be nice to actually hear maybe first Jan in terms of responding to some of the questions that you may have received on the side. Jan?
Yeah, sure. I can see the ones I responded to was, can anyone join the circles? I'll just say yes. It's not a Scout thing. It's the Online Circle of Compassion is an initiative for all people. So regardless of age or whatever, it's not something that should hold you back. You can always reach out and be part of it. It can be as a participant, or if you'd like to take another step and maybe coordinate within a country, finding participants or learning to be a facilitator. And that's what we're there for. You will be equipped. So it's just a matter of reaching out anyway. That's the basic idea. We are here, reach out, and we will answer your call 24/7.
Great, Jan, thank you. How about Nika? Did you get anything?
I don't think so for now.
Not yet, okay. Now our wonderful back facilitator, Anya, is now sharing a question that was raised, and it's said, and I will read it. As a Scouts organization, we cannot use the dialogue in political issues like sessions about it or topics of political campaigns in the face of the most who needs the dialogue. This So in the face of the people who need it the most, i.e. the politicians, so how can we relate to this this challenge of actually responding to a public situation that is obviously at times very political? How do we then use dialogue as a scouting organization in that context? So I don't know who wants to respond among any of the 5 speakers.
If I may also add a little bit here, Patrice.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Amel, for your question. We definitely understand that when your national scout organization, in many countries, either they are supported by the government or they have a strong link because of the educational departments, it becomes a very tricky or a sensible situation if you want to address dialogue when there's conflict in your country at a political level. So one of the approaches that you can take is not necessarily making it too visible or too explicit the reason why you are using dialogue, not necessarily labeling with this is to address the political issue happening here. Many NSOs in many regions and countries, and Amanda could confirm that, is they start promoting dialogue. They start promoting the topic. They start promoting the benefits for a broader community, the general objectives of it, what could be the benefits in long term, and other national scout organizations identify other organizations to make an alliance, not to start this initiative alone, but identify other organizations, civil society organizations that can serve as a more neutral image that can confirm to any of the parties in your country that you are not on one or the other side, but can validate the neutrality of your intentions. So if you would like more orientations of that, we can, from the regional level, support you on this, or you can also reach out to the global level to, if you have any questions and if you will be in need of that kind of support.
Thank you, Cynthia. It answers in part another question I have received, which talks about and you know, says basically that Amanda, your Nicaragua's experience could be a big referral for Colombia's current situation. And so the question is whether in Nicaragua, any document explaining the process of dialogue that has emerged in such a successful way, can it be relayed back to the regional office to share back to possibly Colombia among one example where there's a big need today? Es una pregunta más o menos, Amanda, para usted, a saber si hay algo de escrito, un documento que resumen la metodología del diálogo que se pasó adentro de su organización en Nicaragua, y si se puede compartir eso con Colombia, por ejemplo, donde la situación es muy difícil.
Bueno, prometo hacerlo más suave. Pues hay una relatoría donde quedó todo el proceso descrito, pero quizás habría que transformarlo en un documento más metodológico. Yo creo que eso es posible y pues trataré de coordinarlo con la dirección ejecutiva de Scout de Nicaragua.
So Amanda says that a lot has been noted, taken down, but there hasn't been yet a document that has emerged out of it, although she says that she's willing to move ahead in this direction and making it available eventually. Gracias, Amanda. Thank you. Other questions that you may have, please share those in the space, in the chat, as we interact with each other in as dialogical a way as possible, given the limitations of our Zoom environment. Anya, anything?
Patrice, if I may add, maybe
yes,
there
please.
are other audiences, not only from National Scout organizations, and maybe this is a call for action. Many National Scout organizations have knowledge of this program and this content. And what in these cases as Nicaragua or Colombia, and I will cite in this moment also the effort that Tunis did in the Arab region, where they started working about culture of peace through leadership, not to put it up front to deal with conflict. And in other countries, in El Salvador, there has been efforts to deal with youth violence, and of course you cannot just go frontline against the gangs, but that's an ultimate purpose. There are many members or participants here that you are part of an organization that is also working with youth in your country, and we are always stronger together. In a national context, in a local context, we can think better when we have different perspectives. And if you are taking part in this call and you have a notion of how to contact your National Scout organization in the country where you are, and there's an issue, there's a social conflict, interreligious conflict, or different kinds of topics that you identify, dialogue could be a tool. We encourage you and we invite you to contact the National Scout organization. They have knowledge of this program. They probably need an ally, another perspective, the connection with a local network to better address the issue. We have the possibility to have a number of volunteers that will be willing to support, learn from the knowledge of your organization, and adjust any methodology to address an issue at the national level. So it's always a common effort. And in all the cases, we cannot do anything, or it's not so meaningful without the collaboration of community actors and civil society.
Yes, indeed. Thank you, Cynthia, for this really important points that you're raising and suggestions for moving forward constructively in this area where tensions and conflicts can be so challenging and complex that Scouts cannot lose their neutrality over this. And so somehow it's a very tight rope to walk on, but there has been positive experiences as in Nicaragua and other countries, so that we can learn and share that knowledge and use it in different ways. And even only if you personally, now people on this space are not using dialogue for that specific purpose of addressing major political conflicts, you still need to be aware of that as you make choices on how far you go with your dialogue on different issues that you are related to, because ultimately, if you want to improve any areas of human dynamics, it will lead to advocacy or positioning on policy that will relate somehow to government, possibly in the short, medium, or long term. So somehow being aware of that and how to balance that that neutral position that Scouts need to remain within, nationally and regionally and beyond, is very important. And yet it doesn't mean, of course, doing nothing. On the contrary, there's not enough people that I think try to keep to that balanced position in order to allow for more people to share spaces where they can share their thoughts and be hopefully through the listening dialogical process transform their understanding and do so in a more respectful way of each other. So thank you again. In closing, I'd like to ask our 5 participants just a brief on-the-spot question. If you had one sentence that you would want to share with everyone in terms of the power of dialogue, what would it be? For me, dialogue. So who wants to go first?
I can start out. Okay.
John, okay, yes. You're used to going first today, so go ahead.
Okay, for me, dialogue well, I'll say go first and I have nothing to say. For me, dialogue has been, has transformed my life. That's a sentence at least.
It's an incredible sentence. Thank you. It's really powerful. Yeah. Who else?
I guess I'll go second as we are following the order. So for me, dialogue is first of all inspiration and a tool for empowerment, because when you feel that you have this peaceful methods of addressing really all different kinds of issues, you feel the energy to actually improve and change the situation. That's a very long sentence, sorry. It was a sentence and
it's with commas. No, it's good. And Nika, you hit on the word which I wanted to conclude on, among others, which is empowering, dialogue as empowering. So thank you. And it was mentioned also in some of the takeaways that Derek presented, this notion of empowerment. So that's great. Okay, now, well, let's follow the order then. I mean,
yes, it's for me, dialogue, it's simple. It's just a way of life.
Sorry, could you repeat? A way?
It's a way of life.
Yes,
it's like,
amen.
Yeah,
that was another thing I had on my list. Thank you. Thank you, I mean.
Thank you.
Okay, Derek.
For me, what I think best describes dialogue is a word in our own Hiligaynon language, which is kaangtanan. Dialogue is kaangtanan because it is one thing that connects every one of us, despite of our creed, despite of our age, despite of our gender, despite of our belief. So dialogue is the kaangtanan or the interconnectedness of every being.
Salamat po. Thank you, Derek. Kaangtanan is a new word for me and maybe for many of us. And I think we need to remember it and practice it. So thank you again. And finally, Amanda.
Bueno, también para mí el diálogo es poder conectar de una manera muy profunda con el otro, asumir tu responsabilidad en el rol de esa conexión, y eso puede transformar tu vida y la de los demás.
So Amanda is saying that dialogue is that possibility of deeply communicating with somebody else that helps develop sort of the responsibility individually and collectively towards each other, and then do something about it. Cynthia, what was the third point Amanda was saying? Help me. La tercera parte, Amanda.
Y eso te permite transformar tu vida y la de los demás.
And that allows you to transform your life and that of others. Gracias. Thank you, Amanda, for your patience. So, indeed, I think that you've already taken and 3 out of the 4 things I wanted to say. So I won't repeat, but I just want to add the fourth one, which is we see that dialogue starts with promoting, harmony, better understanding, but eventually it goes much further than that, because of course, through the trust that we develop in the respect of dialogue, despite similarities and differences, we are then called to be responsible citizens, global citizens, to be active in our world, to make it better, to make a better world. And so the role of dialogue for that, as it begins, it's a tool. Eventually, it becomes a way of life, as Jon said. And so thank you for sharing all of this together, these incredible examples. And I know this is only the tip of the iceberg worldwide in the Scouting movement. So thank you again to everybody. I'd like to thank in particular, of course, our 5 presenters, Jon, Nika, Derek, Amin, and Amanda. But also our 5 translators, Heinz, Magda, Ralia, Gabriele, and Corentin. Thank you for your translating efforts. And of course, on the organizing side, I'd like to thank WOSM and the WOSM team under Cynthia's wonderful leadership, but also with John in the background somewhere in Georgia, in the USA, who's helped also in the process, and many others, I'm sure. And also on the KAICIID side, I'd like to thank the pillar for our webinar series, Anya Piskur, and also Shirin, who's with us today, and many others as well. So on that note, I wish all of you Ka'ang Tanan to interconnect more and more together globally. And many thanks for all your wisdom today and your efforts. Thank you.